I stood outside the double mahogany doors of the Grand Sapphire, taking a deep breath. The air smelled of expensive lilies, roasting prime rib, and the specific, metallic scent of money. My money, actually. Though nobody inside knew that yet. I looked down at myself. I was wearing a faded gray hoodie that had seen better days, a pair of jeans with a legitimate hole in the knee, not the fashionable kind, and scuffed sneakers that were slightly damp from the rain. I looked like I had just walked off a double shift at a diner, which was exactly the image my family had of me. They thought I was Zoey, the failure. Zoey, the ATM, Zoey, the stain. I pushed the doors open. The ballroom was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars dripped light onto the marble floors. Tables were draped in silk, and the centerpieces were towering arrangements of white orchids. It was tasteful, elegant, and completely wasted on the woman of honor. Brenda stood in the center of the room, holding a glass of champagne like it was a scepter. She was wearing a red sequin gown that was a little too tight, and a little too bright for a 62nd birthday, but Brenda never let good taste get in the way of attention. Beside her stood my Aunt Marge, Brenda's sister, and my stepbrother, Tyler. The moment I stepped onto the plush carpet, the chatter in the room seemed to dip. It wasn't a silence, just a noticeable drop in volume as eyes turned toward the intruder. Brenda turned. Her smile froze, then twisted into a sneer that I knew better than my own reflection. She didn't walk toward me, she glided, her entourage trailing behind her. "Oh, look," Brenda said, her voice pitched loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "The stain has arrived. I explicitly told security to keep the riffraff out." "Happy birthday, Brenda," I said, keeping my voice low. I held out a small, crudely wrapped box. Inside was a ceramic mug I'd bought at a thrift store for $2. It was part of the costume. Marge laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "Did you walk here, Zoey? You smell like wet dog and desperation." "My car broke down," I lied smoothly. "I just wanted to wish you a happy birthday." "You wanted a free meal," Tyler chimed in, swirling his scotch. He looked me up and down with open contempt. "Look at her. It's embarrassing, Mom. She's bringing down the property value just by standing here." Brenda snatched the gift from my hand, shook it once, and then tossed it onto a nearby service table like it was trash. "Well, don't expect a seat. The tables are for guests who actually contributed to the event. You can go to the kitchen. I'm sure they have some scraps from the prep station." I felt the familiar heat rise in my cheeks, not shame, not anymore. It was anger compacted and pressurized over years until it felt like a diamond in my chest. "I actually need to talk to you, Brenda," I said. "About the venue fee?" Brenda rolled her eyes, turning back to her friends. "Oh God. Here we go. She probably needs $20 for gas. Ignore her, everyone. She's just challenged." She leaned in to whisper to a woman next to her, a wealthy neighbor named Mrs. Gable. "We tried so hard with her. But you know, some apples fall from the tree and roll straight into the gutter." I stood my ground. "The venue fee, Brenda." The manager said the check bounced. Brenda's head snapped back around. For a second, there was panic in her eyes, but she masked it instantly with aggression. She stepped into my personal space, the smell of her heavy perfume choking me. "Shut your mouth," she hissed, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "I told everyone you paid for this as a thank you for all I've done for you. Don't you dare humiliate me. Go to the kitchen, wash dishes if you have to, and pay the bill." "I don't have $50,000, Brenda," I said calmly. "Then find it," she snapped. "Or I'll tell everyone about that little incident when you were 16. You know, the one with the pills." It was a lie. A fabrication she used to keep me in line. But the threat was real. She would ruin my reputation in a heartbeat. "Fine," I said, looking down at my shoes. I'll see what I can do." Good girl, she patted my cheek, her nails digging in slightly. Now get out of my sight. You're ruining the aesthetic. As she turned away, laughing with Marge about the help, I walked toward the shadows of the room. I didn't go to the kitchen, though. I leaned against a pillar, watching them. Brenda thought she was the queen of the Grand Sapphire tonight. She thought she had bullied her stepdaughter into submission one more time. She thought I was broken, and stupid. She didn't know that I had purchased the Grand Sapphire 18 hours ago. She didn't know that the staff she was snapping her fingers at were technically my employees. And she certainly didn't know that tonight wasn't a birthday party. It was an eviction notice. Watching Brenda preen under the chandelier, my eyes drifted to the corner of the room where my father, Frank, was holding court near the bar. He looked older, his tuxedo straining slightly at the waist. He was laughing at something Tyler said, a genuine, hearty laugh. I couldn't remember the last time he laughed at anything I said. Seeing him triggered a memory so vivid I could almost taste the dust of the basement. My mother died of brain cancer when I was 15. She was the sun in my universe, warm, constant, and nurturing. My father was a planet that orbited her. Without her gravity, he spun out of control immediately. I thought we would grieve together. I thought it would be us against the world. But the funeral flowers hadn't even wilted before Brenda appeared. She was a waitress at the diner where Dad drank his morning coffee. She was flashy, loud, and gave him the attention he craved. 4 months. That's all it took. For months after Mom was put in the ground, Frank married Brenda. I remembered the day they moved in. Brenda brought Tyler, who was 18 then, and her sister Marge seemed to come as part of the package deal. Zoey, sweetie, Brenda had said on that first day, standing in the doorway of my bedroom, the room Mom had painted yellow for me. Tyler needs this room. He's a growing boy, he needs the space for his studies. But this is my room, I had whispered, clutching a pillow. Dad didn't even look at me. He was busy carrying Brenda's luggages. Don't be selfish, Zoey. The basement is finished. It's private. You'll like it down there. It wasn't finished. It was concrete and cold. In the winter, I could see my breath. I slept in a sleeping bag on a cot because Brenda said buying a new bed was a waste of resources we need for the family business. The family business was whatever scheme Tyler was running that week. I became the ghost of the house. I learned quickly that if I was visible, I was a target. If I ate an apple, I was eating them out of house and home. If I needed new shoes for school, I was high maintenance. Meanwhile, Tyler drove a brand new Mustang. One night, when I was 17, I found a letter on the kitchen counter. It was from an insurance company. It was addressed to me but opened. It was regarding my mother's life insurance policy. A payout of $400,000. Money intended for my inheritance and college fund. I ran to my father, the paper shaking in my hands. Dad? What is this? Mom left this for me. Frank looked up from his newspaper, his face flushing red. But before he could speak, Brenda stepped in. It's for the family, Zoey, she said, snatching the letter. We invested it into Tyler's startup. When it pays off, we'll all be rich. You should be grateful we're managing it for you. You're too young to handle that kind of money. But I need that for college, I cried. I got into state. State. Brenda laughed. Honey, we can't afford that. You're going to community college, if you go at all. And you'll need to work. Tyler's business needs capital. I looked at my dad. Dad? Please. He finally looked at me, his eyes hollow. Listen to your mother, Zoey. She knows finances better than I do. That was the betrayal that hurt more than the cold basement. My father, the man my mother made me promise to take care of, had sold my future to buy his new wife's happiness. I didn't go to college. I started working 3 jobs. Waitress, cleaner, night shift at a warehouse. I handed over 80% of my salary to them for rent and groceries, hoping that if I paid enough, if I worked hard enough, they would finally see me as a daughter. I was the provider. I was the ATM. And tonight, standing in the Grand Sapphire, watching Dad laugh with the son who stole my education, I realized the little girl in the basement was finally gone. I wasn't looking for their love anymore. I was looking for the receipt. The trauma of those years wasn't just about the money. It was the gaslighting. They made me believe I was lucky they kept me around. They made me believe I was a burden. "You're so intense, Zoey," Brenda would say when I asked about the money. "Why do you care about cash so much? It's vulgar. We're a family." Family. I looked across the ballroom. Brenda was signaling the waiter for more champagne. Tyler was showing off a watch that probably cost more than my first car, bought with money he grifted from someone else. They built their lives on my mother's grave and my stolen future. But ghosts have a way of coming back to haunt you. Especially when the ghost owns the building. Most people think revenge is a fiery thing. An explosion of screaming and breaking things. But for me, the moment everything changed wasn't hot. It was freezing cold. It happened 3 years ago. My grandma Edith, Mom's mother, was the only person who kept a lifeline to me. She was in a nursing home, and I visited her every Tuesday. She knew about Brenda, about the basement, about the stolen insurance money. She was the one who whispered, "Endure it, Zoey. But don't you dare break." When Grandma Edith died, I felt like the last tether to humanity had snapped. I was 29, exhausted and alone. The day of her funeral was rainy. I was standing in the hallway of the funeral home, trying to compose myself before going into the viewing room. The door was slightly ajar. I heard Brenda's voice. It was that distinct, scratchy whisper she used when she thought she was being clever. "I'm telling you, Marge, the old bat must have had jewelry stashed somewhere," Brenda said. "We need to find it before Zoey does," Tyler's voice added. "I need a getaway. Mexico sounds good. We can sell the jewelry and book it for next week." "What about the funeral costs?" Marge asked. Brenda snorted. "Zoey will cover it. We'll just tell her there were unexpected fees. She's such a cow. You squeeze her, and money just comes out. She's too desperate for us to love her to say no." "The little milk cow," Tyler laughed. "God, she's pathetic. Did you see her crying over the casket?" "Oh, Grandma, don't leave me. Grow up." I stood there, frozen. My hand was hovering over the door handle. "She's such a cow. You squeeze her, and money just comes out." Something inside me didn't just break, it died. The part of me that was a daughter, a sister, a girl wanting approval, it just withered and turned to dust right there in the hallway. The tears stopped instantly. My breathing slowed. A strange, icy clarity washed over my brain. It was like putting on a pair of glasses after years of blurred vision. I didn't storm in. I didn't scream. I walked to the bathroom, washed my face, fixed my hair, and walked into that room with a face of stone. "Zoey!" Brenda cried, rushing over to hug me, performing her grief for the few attendees. "Oh, we are so devastated." I didn't hug her back. I just stood there, limp. "Yes," I said. "Devastated." That was the day I stopped being a victim and started being an architect. Grandma Edith had left a will. But she was smart. She knew Brenda would try to intercept it. She had left it with a separate lawyer, a man named Mr. Sterling, an old friend of hers. The inheritance wasn't millions, but it was significant. It was a house in the suburbs and a stock portfolio worth about $80,000. When Mr. Sterling called me a week later, I made him promise to seal the records. "They can't know," I told him. To them, Grandma died penniless. I sold the house. I liquidated the stocks. I took every penny and I started investing in real estate. I worked 20 hours a day. I taught myself about the market. I flipped foreclosure properties. While Brenda and Tyler thought I was working double shifts at a diner to pay their bills, I was actually building an empire. I created a shell company, Vance Holdings. I hired a proxy to sign documents. The first year, I made my first million. The second year, I bought the strip mall where Tyler's failed business used to be. And 6 months ago, I started buying the debt. I bought the mortgage on Dad and Brenda's house from the bank. I bought the loan on Tyler's car. And yesterday, when I saw the Grand Sapphire was up for sale due to bankruptcy, I bought the venue. I didn't do it to show off. I did it to hold the leash. Back in the present, I watched Brenda laughing, throwing her head back. She had no idea that the milk cow had bought the farm. She thought I was here to be humiliated. But I was here for a promotion. I was promoting myself from victim to executioner. I reached into my pocket and touched the small audio recorder. I clicked it on. It was time to collect the final pieces of evidence. The trap was set, and the rats were already smelling the cheese. I pushed off the pillar and made my way toward the buffet. I wasn't hungry, but I needed to be in a central location. I grabbed a glass of cranberry juice, non-alcoholic, cheap, consistent with my character. "Hey, sis." The voice was oily. Tyler slid up beside me, smelling of scotch and expensive cologne. He was wearing a suit that cost more than my supposed annual salary, and he wore it with the arrogance of a man who has never worked a hard day in his life. "Tyler," I said, keeping my eyes down. "Happy birthday to Brenda." Yeah, he waved a hand dismissively. "Listen, Zoey. We need to talk business." He guided me, forcefully, toward a quieter table near the back. Sitting there was a man I recognized. It was Robert Snell. Brenda called him the family lawyer, but a quick Google search 3 months ago told me he had been disbarred for embezzlement in 2019. "Sit down, Zoey," Tyler said, pulling out a chair. "What is this?" I asked, widening my eyes to feign nervousness. "We're worried about you," Tyler said, putting on a frown that looked painful. "Mom and we've noticed you've been acting erratic lately. Working too much. Not making sense when you talk. The stress is getting to you." "I'm fine," I stammered. "I'm just tired." "That's exactly it," Snell said, sliding a thick stack of documents across the table. "You're exhausted. You're not thinking clearly. We found out about the bequest." My heart skipped a beat, but I kept my face blank. They must have heard rumors about a distant relative of Mom's passing away. They were sniffing for money like bloodhounds. "What bequest?" I asked. "Don't play dumb," Tyler snapped, then caught himself. "Look, we know there might be some money coming in from Aunt Sarah's estate. And honestly, Zoey, with your history of instability, we don't think you can handle it." "Instability?" I asked. "I pay all your bills, Tyler." "See? That's the paranoia talking," Tyler said, glancing around to see if anyone was watching. "These papers just appoint Mom and me as your legal guardians. A conservatorship. Just for finances. We'll manage the money, give you an allowance, make sure you don't blow it on, your episodes." I looked down at the papers. Custody of my life. They wanted to enslave me legally. If I signed this, they would have control over everything. Even Vance Holdings, if they ever found out about it. I need to read it," I said, reaching for the pen. "No time," Snell said quickly. "The notary is leaving in 10 minutes. Just sign here, here, and here. It's for your own good, Zoey." Tyler leaned in, his voice dropping to a threatening growl. "Sign it, or Mom kicks you out of the garage." You'll be homeless tonight. I held the pen. My hand trembled, perfectly theatrically. I don't know. I murmured. Sign the damn paper, you stupid sheep, Tyler whispered, losing his patience. That was the cue. I jerked my hand, accidentally, knocking over the tall glass of cranberry juice. The red liquid splashed everywhere, all over the documents, all over the table, and splashing onto Tyler's pristine white cuffs. Oh my God. I cried out, standing up. I'm so clumsy. I'm so sorry. You idiot. Tyler roared, jumping up. He grabbed a napkin, scrubbing at his sleeve. Look what you did. You ruined everything. The documents were soaked, the ink running. Ruined. I'm sorry, I wailed, backing away. Tyler lunged at me, grabbing my arm hard. You did that on purpose. Let go of me. I shouted, loud enough for heads to turn. Tyler released me instantly, putting his hands up as people looked over. He fixed his suit, his face red with fury. You see, he said loudly to the room. She's unstable. She can't even hold a glass of juice without having a meltdown. I stood there panting, looking terrified. But inside I was grinning. I had the audio recording of him calling me a sheep and threatening me with homelessness. I had the witness of him grabbing me. And I had destroyed the papers they tried to trap me with. I just wanted to help, I sobbed, covering my face with my hands. Get her out of here, Brenda's voice cut through the room. She was marching over, Marge in tow. This is exactly why we need the doctor. Doctor. I lowered my hands. Yes, Brenda said, signaling to the DJ to cut the music. The room went silent. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for this scene. My stepdaughter, she's not well. In fact, we have a specialist here tonight to help us with an intervention. She pointed to Aunt Marge. A intervention? I asked, voice trembling. It's time to face the truth, Zoey, Brenda said, stepping onto the small stage area. We can't let you hurt yourself anymore. The trap I had set was sprung, but they thought they were the ones pulling the lever. They were about to escalate this to a public spectacle. Perfect. The higher they climbed, the harder the fall. The silence in the ballroom was suffocating. 200 guests, Brenda's friends, creditors, and targets for Tyler's scams, were staring at me. To them, I was the crazy daughter in the wet hoodie. Brenda stood on the stage, the microphone in her hand, looking every bit the tragic martyr mother. It breaks my heart to do this publicly, Brenda said, wiping a non-existent tear. But we are a family who believes in transparency. And we need your support. My stepdaughter, Zoey, has been battling severe mental illness for years. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Poor Brenda, someone whispered. She's a saint for putting up with it. Dr. Margaret, Brenda gestured to Marge. Please explain to everyone why we need to take these drastic measures. Aunt Marge stepped up. She was wearing a blazer that she probably thought looked professional, but I recognized it from the clearance rack at a department store. Marge wasn't a doctor. Marge was a dog groomer who had lost her license for dyeing a poodle pink with toxic chemicals. But tonight, she was Dr. Margaret, Ph.D. Thank you, Brenda, Marge said, adjusting her glasses. She used a tone that was patronizing and clinical. I have been observing Zoey for years. The symptoms are classic. Paranoid delusions. Pathological lying. And a complete detachment from financial reality. She pointed a finger at me. Zoey believes people are stealing from her. She believes she is being persecuted. This is a textbook case of persecutory delusional disorder. She is a danger to herself and her family's financial stability. The audacity was breathtaking. They were projecting their own crimes onto me. Therefore, Marge continued, it is my professional medical opinion that Zoey be placed under immediate emergency guardianship. She cannot be trusted with decisions. She needs to be contained. Tyler nodded solemnly from the side. It's hard, but it's the truth. I felt the eyes of the room pressing on me. It was a kangaroo court. They were stripping me of my humanity in front of everyone I knew. I took a step forward. My voice was calm, cutting through the murmurs. Dr. Margaret, I said loud enough for the room to hear. That's a fascinating diagnosis. Marge blinked. Yes. It is. I have a quick question, I said, walking slowly toward the stage. Where did you get your PhD? Marge stiffened. My credentials are not on trial here, young lady. Your sanity is. I'm just curious, I pressed. Was it Harvard? Yale? Or was it the online Academy of Canine Aesthetics? A few people giggled. Marge's face turned a blotchy red. How dare you? Brenda shrieked into the mic, she is a respected specialist. Specialist in what? I asked, locking eyes with Marge. Poodle cuts. Because last I checked, Marge, you were cutting hair at Paws and Claws until last Tuesday. She's delusional. Marge shouted, her professional facade cracking instantly. See? She's inventing things. Am I? I pulled my phone out. Because I can pull up the State Licensing Board website right now. Shall we search for Dr. Margaret? Marge took a step back, nearly tripping over a monitor speaker. Brenda grabbed the mic, her knuckles white. Enough. Brenda yelled. You are sick, Zoey. This is exactly what I mean. You attack everyone who tries to help you. She turned to the crowd, playing her trump card. You see what I deal with? This hostility. This ungratefulness. After I took her in. After I raised her like my own. I stood in the center of the room, alone. You didn't raise me, Brenda. You hid me in a basement. Lies. Brenda screamed. You lived in a luxury suite. We gave you everything. The gaslighting was fully operational. The guests were looking back and forth. They wanted to believe Brenda because Brenda threw good parties. Brenda was one of them. I was the stain. But I wasn't done. I looked toward the entrance. It was 8:15 p.m. You say I'm paranoid, I said softly, but the acoustics of the room carried my voice. You say I imagine people stealing from me. Because you do. Tyler shouted. You're broke because you're lazy. We'll see, I said. At that moment, the waiters began circulating with the main course. But one waiter didn't go to the tables. He walked straight toward me. He was tall, dressed in the uniform, but I knew him. It was Investigator Harrison. He had been undercover in the catering staff for 3 hours. He gave me a subtle nod. He had heard everything. He had heard Marge impersonating a doctor. He had heard the threats. I turned back to Brenda. If I'm so crazy, Brenda, why are you sweating? Brenda touched her forehead. She was sweating. The foundation on her face was starting to streak. I am not sweating, she spat. I am glowing. It's my birthday. Enjoy it, I said. It's certainly going to be memorable. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. They had tried to declare me insane, and I had publicly mocked them. But they weren't done. They needed money. And since they couldn't get my signature on the guardianship papers yet, they needed a new victim. They turned their eyes to the guests. Brenda signaled Frank. It was time for the good cop routine. My father walked up to the stage, taking the microphone from Brenda. He looked weary, beaten down, a performance he had perfected over the last decade. Please, Frank said, his voice trembling. Let's not fight. Today is about celebration, but also about family. He looked out at the crowd, his eyes wet. You all know the struggle we've had. Raising a child with special needs. He gestured vaguely at me. It drains you. Emotionally. Financially. My stomach churned. He was using my mother's death and his own neglect to paint himself as a hero. But Frank continued, his voice strengthening. We have hope. My son, Tyler, has been working on something incredible. A way to secure the future for all of us. Including Zoey. Tyler stepped up, buttoning his stained suit jacket, regaining his composure. He flashed a charming smile that didn't reach his shark-like eyes. Thanks, Dad, Tyler said. Folks, I know things got heated. Families are messy, right? A few sympathetic chuckles from the crowd. But business is about numbers, Tyler said. I'm launching the Future Tech Growth Fund. It's an exclusive opportunity. Crypto-backed, AI managed. We're talking 20% returns, guaranteed, monthly. I watched as he motioned to the waiters to pass out glossy brochures. Guaranteed returns. The hallmark of a Ponzi scheme. We usually have a minimum buy-in of $10,000, Tyler said smoothly. But for Mom's birthday, for our friends, we're accepting $5,000 tonight. Checks can be written to Sullivan Enterprises. I looked around. I saw Mrs. Higgins, an elderly neighbor who walked with a cane, reaching into her purse for her checkbook. I saw Mr. Henderson, a retired teacher, nodding enthusiastically. These were good people. Vulnerable people. And my family was about to bleed them dry right in front of me. My father was nodding along. It's true. We've put our own savings into it. Even the insurance money from my late wife. God rest her soul, we put it all in Tyler's hands. That was the line that almost made me vomit. He was admitting he stole Mom's money, framing it as an investment, while soliciting more victims. Don't do it. I shouted. Heads turned again. It's a scam. I yelled, pointing at Tyler. There is no fund. He's using new money to pay old debts. Look at his watch. That's your pension money. Security. Tyler yelled. She's having an episode. Get her out. Two burly security guards started moving toward me. But then, the double doors swung open with a bang. A hush fell over the room. Standing in the doorway was a man who radiated power. He was in his 60s, silver-haired, wearing a tuxedo that cost more than this entire building. It was Arthur Sterling. The billionaire real estate mogul. Brenda gasped. Her eyes lit up like Christmas trees. She forgot about me instantly. She pushed Frank aside and practically ran down the stairs. Mr. Sterling, she cooed, her voice transforming into pure syrup. Oh my goodness. You came. I sent the invitation, but I didn't dare hope. She reached out to take his hand. Welcome to my party. It is such an honor. Are you looking for investment opportunities? Tyler was just. Mr. Sterling didn't take her hand. He didn't even look at her. He looked right past her, scanning the room. I'm not here for you, Mrs. Sullivan, Sterling said, his voice deep and gravelly. Brenda blinked, confused. But the invitation. I'm here to meet the owner, Sterling said. Well, I'm the hostess, Brenda laughed nervously. I rented the place. So for tonight, I'm the queen of the castle. Sterling finally looked at her, with an expression of mild distaste, like he had stepped in something unpleasant. I'm looking for the owner of the Grand Sapphire. I have business to conclude regarding the acquisition. Acquisition? Tyler perked up, sensing money. You want to buy the place? No, Sterling said. I work for the holding company that just bought it. I'm here to report to my superior. Brenda looked confused. Superior? Who? Sterling's eyes found me in the back of the room. He gave a barely perceptible nod. I stayed silent. Not yet. Brenda laughed again, louder this time. Well, whoever it is, grab a drink. Come, Mr. Sterling. Let me introduce you to my son. He's a visionary. She tried to herd Sterling toward the stage, toward the trap of the Ponzi scheme. Tyler, she called. Tell Mr. Sterling about the returns. I watched Mrs. Higgins holding her pen over her checkbook. She looked at Sterling, then at Tyler. The presence of a billionaire seemed to validate everything. If Sterling was here, surely this was a legitimate event. I couldn't let them sign those checks. I checked my watch. 8:30 p.m. You might want to hold on to that check, Mrs. Higgins, I said loudly. Shut up, Zoey. Frank yelled. One more word and I'm physically throwing you out myself. I wouldn't do that, Dad, I said. Because your other wife just walked in. Frank froze. What? Everyone turned to the side entrance. The woman standing at the side door was shaking. She was younger than Brenda, maybe early 40s, worn down, dressed in cheap department store clothes, clutching the hands of two confused-looking children, a boy and a girl. Her name was Cynthia. I had found her 3 months ago. It wasn't hard. Dad was sloppy. He had a second phone he kept in the garage. I tracked the location history. It went to a small town in Ohio every other weekend. He told Brenda he was going on fishing trips. Fishing for a second family. Frank? Cynthia's voice cracked across the silent ballroom. Frank's face drained of all color. He looked like a wax figure melting under the stage lights. Cynthia, he whispered. What are you doing here? Brenda spun around. Who the hell is Cynthia? Cynthia let go of the children's hands and marched across the dance floor. She walked with the fury of a woman scorned. Who am I? Cynthia yelled. I'm his wife. The crowd gasped. A collective ooh went through the room. Wife? Brenda shrieked. I'm his wife. We've been married for 15 years. And we've been married for 2. Cynthia shouted back. She reached into her purse and pulled out a marriage certificate, slamming it onto a nearby table. Franklin. You told me you were divorced. You told me she was your crazy ex who wouldn't sign the papers. Brenda looked at Frank. Her eyes were bulging. Frank? What is she talking about? Frank stammered, backing away. Brenda, honey, it's complicated. She's confused. Slap. Cynthia's hand connected with Frank's cheek with a sound like a pistol crack. Confused? Cynthia screamed. You told me you needed $40,000 for cancer treatment. I took a second mortgage on my house, Frank. I gave you everything. And you're here throwing a party. Cancer. Brenda yelled. He used that money to buy a boat. A boat. Cynthia looked ready to kill. My kids are eating ramen noodles so you could buy a boat. Bigamy, I said from my spot near the pillar. It's a felony, Dad. And fraud. That's another felony. Frank looked at me with pure hatred. You did this. You called her. I sent her a plane ticket, I shrugged. First class. Unlike the way you treat your families. The room was in chaos. Mrs. Higgins put her checkbook away. Mr. Henderson capped his pen. The illusion of the perfect, successful family was shattering in real time. Tyler, seeing his investors getting cold feet, tried to salvage the situation. He grabbed the microphone again. Okay. Family drama. Tyler laughed nervously. Everyone has it. Dad's a player, okay. But that doesn't change the numbers. The fund is separate. The fund is solid. He pointed at me. This is all her doing. She's trying to sabotage us. She's jealous. Jealous? I asked, stepping closer. Of what? A father who has 2 wives and steals from both. A brother who fakes returns. I don't fake anything. Tyler screamed. Really? I asked. Then explain why the crypto wallet you showed everyone on the screen is actually just a screenshot from a Google image search. Tyler turned pale. I checked the metadata, Tyler, I said. And I checked your bank accounts. The ones you thought were hidden. You can't check my accounts. I can when I bought the debt collection agency that's been chasing you for 3 years, I said calmly. Tyler's eyes went wide. What? Focus, Tyler, Brenda yelled, shoving Frank toward Cynthia to deal with her. Get security. Get her out. She's ruining the birthday. Brenda turned on me, her face twisted into a mask of pure ugliness. You little witch. You planned this. You wanted to humiliate me. I wanted the truth, I said. Get out. Brenda screamed. This is MY party. This is MY venue. I rented it. I have rights. Actually, I said. You don't. Brenda pointed a shaking finger at the security guards. Throw her out. Drag her out. And arrest her for trespassing. The guards looked at Brenda, then at Tyler, then at Frank who was being pummeled by Cynthia's purse. They looked unsure. Do it. Tyler roared. I'm paying you double. 2 guards stepped toward me. One reached out and grabbed my arm, hard. Let's go, miss, the guard grunted. Don't make this ugly. Get your hands off me, I said, my voice dropping an octave. Move, the guard shoved me. Hey. The voice boomed like thunder. It wasn't me. It was Mr. Sterling. He stepped between me and the guard. He didn't look like an old man anymore, he looked like a titan. He placed a hand on the guard's chest and shoved him back with surprising force. You touch her again, Sterling growled, and you will never work in this state again. The guard blinked. Sir, Mrs. Sullivan is the client, Mrs. Sullivan is a squatter. Sterling shouted. He turned to the room. Mrs. Sullivan hasn't paid a dime for this venue. Her check bounced 3 days ago. Brenda gasped. That's a lie. It was a bank error. And Sterling continued, turning to me and bowing his head slightly, a gesture of immense respect. You do not manhandle the owner of the building. The room went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. Brenda froze. Tyler's mouth hung open. Frank stopped trying to dodge Cynthia's purse. Owner. Brenda whispered. What? I stepped out from behind Sterling. I reached up and unzipped my faded gray hoodie. I let it drop to the floor, revealing the simple but elegant black dress underneath. I straightened my spine. Thank you, Arthur, I said to Sterling. At your service, Ms. Vance, Sterling replied loud and clear. I looked at Brenda. Hello, stepmom. Welcome to my party. The silence stretched thin and brittle until it snapped. You? Brenda laughed. It was a hysterical, high-pitched sound. You? Own this. You clean toilets, Zoey. You live in my garage. I live in your garage because I was gathering evidence, I said. And because I wanted to see exactly how far you would go. This is a joke, Tyler said, looking at Sterling. She paid you, didn't she? She hired an actor to play Mr. Sterling. Sterling reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card, flicking it at Tyler. Google me, son. And while you're at it, Google Vance Holdings. Tyler scrambled for his phone. His fingers were shaking so hard he dropped it once before picking it up. Vance Holdings, I said, walking toward the stage. The crowd parted for me like the Red Sea. Parent company of the Grand Sapphire. owner of the Metro Strip Mall. And as of yesterday, owner of the mortgage note for 42 Oak Creek Drive. Brenda went pale. That's my house. It was your house, I corrected. Until you missed your fourth mortgage payment in a row to pay for this party. The bank foreclosed. I bought the note this morning. No, Brenda whispered. No, you can't. I can, I said. And I did. Tyler looked up from his phone, his face gray. Vance Holdings. CEO Zoey Vance. Net worth estimated $8 million. He looked at me with new eyes. Not with respect but with a greedy, hungry desperation. Zoey. Tyler's voice changed instantly. He put on a smile. Sis. Oh my God. You're a genius. Why didn't you tell us? We could have partnered up. Imagine what we could do with my vision and your capital. The audacity was staggering. 5 minutes ago he tried to have me committed. Now he wanted a partnership. There is no partnership, Tyler, I said. There is only an eviction. Now wait a minute, Frank stepped forward, pushing Cynthia away. Zoey, honey. Let's not be rash. We're family. I'm your father. You're a bigamist, Frank, I said coldly. And you stole my mother's insurance money. I borrowed it. Frank stammered. I was going to pay it back. Zoey, look at all you've achieved. You clearly didn't need it. I did you a favor. I made you tough. A favor? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You stole my education. You stole my childhood. But look at you now. Brenda chimed in, switching tactics to flattery. You're a CEO. A millionaire. And who raised you? Who gave you a roof over your head? We did. We made you who you are. You made me a survivor, I said. But don't confuse survival with gratitude. I turned to the DJ booth. Cut the lights. The ballroom lights dimmed, leaving only the stage spotlight on me. I felt like a judge in a courtroom. Investigator Harrison. I called out. The waiter who had been serving drinks stepped forward. He pulled a badge from his apron. Federal Trade Commission, Harrison announced. And I have officers from the local PD outside. What is this? Tyler squeaked. Tyler Sullivan, Harrison said, walking toward him. You are under arrest for securities fraud, wire fraud, and operating a Ponzi scheme. No. Tyler shouted. It's a startup. It's crypto. We have the audio, Tyler, I said, holding up my recorder. And the bank records. And the testimony of 20 elderly victims you scammed last year. 2 uniformed officers entered the room. They marched straight to Tyler. Dad. Mom. Do something. Tyler screamed as they handcuffed him. And Mrs. Sullivan, Harrison turned to Brenda. We have questions about $50,000 in insurance premiums collected for a venue fee that was never paid. I. Brenda stammered. And Dr. Margaret, I pointed to Marge, who was trying to sneak out the back door. Practicing medicine without a license is a felony in this state. I was just giving advice. Marge shrieked as an officer blocked her path. The party had turned into a raid. The guests were filming everything on their phones. The elite family was being dismantled piece by piece. But Brenda had one last burst of venom in her. She looked at me, her eyes filled with pure hate. You think you've won, she hissed. You're still just a lonely, unlovable little girl. You have money. Fine. But you have no one. We were your family. And you just destroyed us. You weren't my family, Brenda, I said, my voice steady. You were my parasites. I'm not leaving. Brenda screamed, grabbing a tablecloth and pulling it. Crystal glasses shattered everywhere. "This is my party. I am the queen." "Mr. Sterling," I said calmly. "Please escort the trespassers off the property." With pleasure, Sterling signaled to the security team, the real security team, who had been waiting in the hall. As they dragged Tyler out, kicking and screaming, and as Frank tried to explain to the police why he had 2 marriage certificates, Brenda stood amidst the broken glass. She looked at me one last time. "You'll regret this, Zoey. You'll die alone." I looked at her, then at Sterling, then at the guests who were finally seeing the truth. "Maybe," I said. "But tonight, I'm going to sleep in a warm bed, in a house I own, with a clean conscience. Can you say the same?" I turned my back on her. "Get her out." The screaming continued all the way to the parking lot. The party at the Grand Sapphire didn't end with a toast, it ended with a crime scene cleanup. After Tyler was shoved into the back of a squad car and Marge was cited and released pending a court date, the ballroom slowly emptied. The guests realized they had been part of a con, left in a mixture of anger and embarrassment. But for me, the night wasn't over. There was one loose end left to tie up. The biggest one. Brenda. She was standing on the curb outside the venue, her mascara running down her face in black rivers, clutching her purse. She had been barred from re-entering the building to get her coat. When she saw me walking toward my car, a modest sedan I kept parked around the block to maintain my cover, she lunged at me. "You think this is funny?" she screamed, her voice ragged. "You destroyed my life. Where am I supposed to go? Frank is in custody. Tyler is in jail. You have to take me home, Zoey. It's your duty." I stopped and looked at her. The entitlement was actually impressive. After everything, she still saw me as the servant. "I am going to the house, Brenda," I said calmly. "To inspect my property. You can ride in the back if you want." The drive was silent. I didn't turn on the radio. I let the silence stretch until it became a physical weight in the car. Brenda sat in the back seat, sniffing loudly, muttering to herself about lawyers and lawsuits. She was already rewriting the narrative in her head, casting herself as the victim of a vindictive stepdaughter. When we pulled into the driveway of 42 Oak Creek Drive, the house looked the same as it always did. The manicured lawn, the big bay windows, the ostentatious fountain in the front yard that Tyler had installed with stolen money. But there was one difference. A locksmith van was parked in the driveway. Brenda scrambled out of the car. "What is that? Who is that?" "I told you, Brenda," I said, getting out and walking up the path. "I bought the note. You were foreclosed on. And since the property was abandoned during the foreclosure process, which is legally what happens when you stop paying bills for 6 months, I am securing the asset. I live here." Brenda shrieked, running to the front door. She jammed her key into the lock. It didn't turn. She rattled the handle, banging on the wood. "Open this door. My things are in there. My furs. My jewelry." The locksmith, a burly man named Dave who I had hired an hour ago, stepped out from the garage. "Ms. Vance." I finished the back doors and the garage. New deadbolts all around. "Thank you, Dave," I said. Brenda turned on me, her face purple. "You can't do this. I have tenants' rights. I have squatters' rights." "Actually," I said, pulling a folded document from my pocket. "You don't. Since you and Dad signed the deed over to a shell company 3 years ago to hide assets from the IRS, a shell company that went bankrupt and sold the asset to me, you are technically trespassing on commercial property. And I have a restraining order." I handed her the paper. It was signed by a judge earlier that afternoon. "You have 10 minutes, I said, checking my watch. "I will allow you to enter with supervision to retrieve essential toiletries, and 1 suitcase of clothing." Anything else stays until the forensic accountants go through it to see what was purchased with stolen funds. One suitcase. Brenda whispered. But my life is in there. Your life was built on my mother's money and my labor, I said. Pick your suitcase wisely, Brenda. The clock is ticking. Walking into that house with her was surreal. For 15 years, I had walked these halls with my head down, afraid to make a sound. I had scrubbed these floors until my knuckles bled. I had been banished to the basement while she redecorated the master bedroom with gold leaf wallpaper. Now, I walked through the foyer with my head high. I watched Brenda frantically throwing clothes into a Louis Vuitton bag, which I made a mental note to check for authenticity later. She grabbed handfuls of jewelry, but I stopped her. No assets, I said firmly. Those are potential evidence for the restitution hearings. Clothing and toiletries only. This is my grandmother's ring, she lied, clutching a diamond bracelet I knew she bought last year. Put it back, Brenda. Or I call the police back here, and we add theft to the list of charges. She dropped the bracelet on the dresser with a clatter, looking at me with eyes that could kill. You are cold, Zoey. You are a monster. We took you in when your mother died. We fed you. You fed me leftovers, I corrected. And you made me pay for them. When her 10 minutes were up, I escorted her to the door. She stood on the porch, holding her single suitcase. The fountain bubbled cheerfully behind her, oblivious to her ruin. Where do I go? She asked. Her voice was small now. The fight was draining out of her. I don't know, I said. Maybe you can call Marge. Or maybe you can find a shelter. You're a resourceful woman, Brenda. You've been surviving off other people for decades. I'm sure you'll figure it out. I closed the heavy oak door in her face. I heard the click of the latch. It was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. I didn't move for a long time. I stood in the foyer of the house that had been my prison. It smelled of Brenda's perfume and Frank's cigar smoke. But underneath that, I could smell the faint scent of lemon pledge, the cleaner I used to use. I walked to the basement door. I opened it and flipped the switch. The light bulb hummed. I walked down the creaky stairs to the cold concrete room, where I had spent my teenage years. My old cot was still there in the corner. I sat on the cot. I thought I would cry, but I didn't. I felt a profound, heavy sense of peace. The monster wasn't under the bed anymore. The monster was on the curb, waiting for an Uber that she probably couldn't afford. I pulled out my phone. I had one text message from Cynthia. Thank you, Zoey. For everything. I'm going back to Ohio. I hope you find peace. I typed back, I just did. This was the moment the house stopped being theirs and started being mine. But I knew I couldn't live here. This place was poisoned. I had to scrub it clean, not just with bleach but with justice. And that process was going to happen in a courtroom. The wheels of justice turn slowly, but when you grease them with undeniable evidence, they can move with terrifying weight. The trial took place for months after the birthday party. It was the talk of the town. The birthday party bust, the local papers called it. I sat in the front row of the courtroom every single day. I wore my best suits, no more hoodies, no more rags. I wanted them to see me. I wanted them to see the CEO of Vance Holdings, not the stinky little sheep. Tyler looked terrible. Prison food and lack of access to his hair products had humbled him. He sat slumped at the defense table, refusing to make eye contact with anyone. Frank looked even worse. He seemed to have aged 20 years. He kept looking back at the gallery, scanning for Cynthia, hoping for forgiveness. But Cynthia wasn't there. She had sent a notarized affidavit detailing his financial abuse and bigamy, and then she had moved on with her life. Brenda was the only one who tried to maintain an air of dignity. She wore a cheap suit she must have bought at a thrift store, but she held her head high, glaring at the jury as if they were guests who had used the wrong fork. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Ms. Alvarez, laid out the case with surgical precision. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Alvarez said, pacing in front of the box. "What you have here is not just a family dispute. It is a criminal enterprise. A systematic predation on the vulnerable." She projected the evidence I had gathered onto the screens. First, the Ponzi scheme. Tyler's Future Tech Growth Fund. Mr. Sullivan took over $200,000 from retirees, Alvarez explained, showing the flow of money. "Did he invest it in crypto?" "No. He spent it on a leased Porsche, bottle service at clubs, and," she paused for effect, "custom-made suits." I watched Mrs. Higgins in the gallery. She was wiping her eyes with a handkerchief. I reached over and squeezed her hand. She squeezed back. Then came the insurance fraud. Brenda Sullivan collected $50,000 in venue fees from family members, Alvarez continued. She claimed it was for insurance and catering. The records show the money went directly into her personal account to pay for cosmetic surgery and designer handbags. The jury looked at Brenda with disgust. Brenda shifted in her seat, whispering furiously to her public defender. But the most damning evidence was against Frank. "Mr. Lynn," Alvarez said, turning to my father, "committed bigamy. A serious crime. But worse, he embezzled $400,000 from the life insurance policy of his first wife, Mary Vance." A photo of my mother appeared on the screen. A gasp went through the room. It was a photo of her laughing, holding me when I was a baby. "This money was legally designated for the trust of her daughter, Zoey," Alvarez said, pointing at me. "Mr. Lynn forged signatures. He created fake college tuition receipts. He drained every cent." I took the stand on the third day. Ms. Vance, the defense attorney, asked me, trying to paint me as the villain. "Isn't it true that you hold a grudge against your family? Isn't this all just revenge because you felt left out?" I leaned into the microphone. "I don't hold a grudge," I said, my voice steady. "I hold the receipts." "Objection," the lawyer yelled. "Overruled," the judge said, looking at me with something close to admiration. "I was a child," I continued, looking directly at Frank. "I was 15. I was grieving. And they didn't just steal my money. They stole my time. They made me work 3 jobs while they lived off my mother's death benefit. That isn't a family dynamic. That is slavery with extra steps." The verdict came back in under 3 hours. Guilty. On all counts. The sentencing hearing was where the real payoff happened. The judge, a stern man with zero tolerance for financial predators, didn't hold back. "Tyler Sullivan," the judge intoned. "For 17 counts of wire fraud and grand larceny, I sentence you to 8 years in federal prison." Tyler sobbed. Loudly. He collapsed onto the table. "Mom. Do something." Brenda Sullivan, the judge continued. "For fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. 5 years. Brenda stood up. "But I have high blood pressure. I can't go to prison." "You should have thought about that before you stole from your own family," the judge snapped. "Sit down." "Franklin," the judge looked at my father with pure contempt. "For bigamy, forgery, and grand theft. 7 years. Frank didn't say anything. He just looked at me. For a second, I thought I saw regret. But then he mouthed, "You ungrateful brat." I smiled. A small, cold smile. And finally, Marge. Marge got probation and community service, mostly because she turned state's witness against the others to save her own skin. As they led them away in cuffs, Marge avoided looking at her sister. The loyal family had eaten each other alive the moment the pressure was applied. As the bailiffs led them out the side door, Brenda stopped and looked back at the gallery. She looked at the life she was leaving behind. Then she looked at me. I didn't look away. I didn't wave. I just watched. I watched the queen being dethroned. I watched the bullies being bullied by the consequences of their own actions. It was the closure I didn't know I needed until that exact moment. It wasn't about hate anymore. It was about balance. The scales had finally tipped back to center. Outside the courthouse, reporters were waiting. Cameras flashed. Ms. Vance. Ms. Vance. How do you feel? I stopped at the bottom of the steps. The sun was shining. The air felt cleaner. I feel, I said into the microphones, like I can finally start my life. Mrs. Higgins was waiting for me by my car. She looked worried. Zoey, she said. The money, the judge said we might get restitution, but it could take years. I don't know how I'm going to pay my heating bill this winter. I took her hands. Mrs. Higgins, check your bank account tomorrow morning. What? I bought the debt, I whispered. And I seized their assets. Tyler's car, Brenda's jewelry, the hidden accounts. I liquidated everything this morning. Everyone is getting paid back. 100 cents on the dollar. She started to cry. But that money, you could have kept it. It was never mine, I said. And it certainly wasn't theirs. It belongs to you. Justice isn't just about punishing the bad guys. It's about making the good guys whole again. And I was just getting started. If you are cheering for this verdict, you are my kind of people. Justice is a dish best served legally. Hit that like button if you think Tyler's tears are the best part of this story. Now, let me tell you what I did with that house of horrors. With the trial over and the family securely behind bars, I was left with the physical remnants of their reign. The biggest remnant was the house at 42 Oak Creek Drive. Legally, it was mine. Vance Holdings held the deed. But emotionally, it was a haunted house. Every corner held a memory I wanted to forget. The kitchen where Brenda yelled at me for using too much dish soap. The dining room where I wasn't allowed to sit during parties. The basement. I stood in the driveway a week after the sentencing, holding a sledgehammer. I didn't want to sell it. Selling it felt like passing the bad energy onto some other unsuspecting family. I wanted to transform it. I hired a contractor, but I told him I wanted to do the demolition myself. First, I went to the master bedroom. I took the sledgehammer to the gold leaf wallpapered walls. Smash. That was for the college fund. Smash. That was for the gaslighting. Smash. That was for calling me a stain. It was exhausting, sweaty work, and it was the best therapy I had ever had. I tore down the walls that separated the kitchen from the living room. I ripped up the carpets that Brenda had forbidden me to walk on with shoes. But the basement was the most important part. I walked down there with a bucket of white paint. The room was dark, damp, and smelled of misery. I spent 3 days scrubbing every inch of concrete. I installed new lighting, warm, bright LED lights that chased away every shadow. I ripped out the old, rusted sink and put in a beautiful kitchenette. I wasn't erasing my past, I was rewriting it. I decided to turn the house into something that would have made my mother proud. I renamed it the Edith Center, after my grandmother. It wasn't going to be a home for me. It was going to be a transitional house for women escaping financial abuse. Women like Cynthia. Women who had been trapped by partners who controlled the money, the cards, and the cars. I reached out to Cynthia. She was back in Ohio, working as a waitress and trying to support her kids. I offered her a job. I need a house manager, I told her over the phone. Someone who understands what these women are going through. Someone tough but kind. The pay is good and there's a 2-bedroom apartment on the 2nd floor, rent-free. There was silence on the line. Then, I heard her sobbing. Zoey, why? I slapped your father. I caused a scene. You told the truth, I said. And you helped me take them down. We're not enemies, Cynthia. We're veterans of the same war. She moved in a month later. Watching her kids run around the backyard, the same backyard where I used to hide to cry, was healing in a way I can't explain. The laughter chased away the ghosts. But I had one more debt to pay. A personal one. I went to the cemetery. I hadn't been there since the funeral 3 years ago, the day I snapped. I stood in front of my mother's grave. The stone was simple, weathered. "Hi, Mom," I whispered. I placed a bouquet of yellow roses, her favorite, on the grass. I did it. I protected myself. I know I promised to take care of Dad, but I realized that taking care of him meant stopping him from hurting anyone else. I hope you understand. The wind rustled the trees. It felt like a gentle hand on my shoulder. And Grandma, I looked at the stone next to hers. You were right. The sheep did grow fangs. I sat there for a long time, just breathing. For the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel the crushing weight of obligation. I didn't feel the need to earn my existence. I was just Zoey. And that was enough. I drove back to the city, to my own apartment, a sleek, modern place downtown that I had bought with my own money. No basements. No secrets. My phone buzzed. It was an email from the prison system. A notification that an inmate had requested a call. Inmate, Brenda Sullivan. I looked at the screen. My thumb hovered over the block button. I thought about what she might want to say. Probably more guilt trips. More screaming. Or maybe a fake apology to try and get money for the commissary. I realized I didn't care. I didn't need to hear it. I didn't need her apology to be whole. Her silence was the only apology I needed. I pressed block. Then I pressed delete. It was over. The story of Zoey the victim was finished. The story of Zoey the CEO, the advocate, the survivor, that was just beginning. I went to my office at Vance Holdings. My assistant, Sarah, was waiting with a stack of files. We have 3 new applications for the Edith Center, she said. And the contractor says the renovations on the basement are done. They want you to inspect the final paint job. I trust them, I said. Paint it yellow. Bright, sunny yellow. Like your mom's room? Sarah asked. She knew the story. Exactly, I smiled. Like sunshine. I looked out the window at the city skyline. I owned buildings out there. I employed hundreds of people. I had power, and I had resources. And I knew exactly what I was going to do with them. I was going to make sure that no other girl ever had to live in a basement because she thought she wasn't worth the space upstairs. We are coming to the very end of our journey together. It's been a wild ride, hasn't it? From the wet hoodie to the CEO's office. I have one final thought to share with you, something I want you to carry with you. 3 years have passed since the birthday party massacre, as my friends now call it. Life is different. Quiet in some ways, louder in others. The quiet comes from the absence of drama. No more frantic calls demanding money. No more walking on eggshells. The loud comes from the work we do at the Edith Center. We've helped over 50 women and children restart their lives. We teach them financial literacy. We help them get lawyers. We help them find their receipts. I visit Tyler in prison once a year. Not to gloat, but to ensure he knows I'm still watching. He looks older, thinner. The arrogance is gone, replaced by a sullen bitterness. He asks for money every time. I refuse every time. He's learning the hard way that the bank of Zoey is permanently closed. Dad. I don't visit Dad. I can't. Some wounds heal, but the scars are too ugly to look at. I send him a card on Christmas. No money. Just a card signed, Zoey. It's more than he deserves, but it's what my mother would have wanted. As for Brenda, she was released on parole last month. I heard through the grapevine that she's living in a small apartment in a neighboring state, working as a telemarketer. A fitting job for someone who loves to talk but never listens. She has no access to me, no access to the family she destroyed. She is the stain now, trying to wash herself out of a world that has moved on without her. I'm standing in the ballroom of the Grand Sapphire again. Tonight, it's not a birthday party for a narcissist. It's a gala. The annual fundraiser for the Edith Center. The room is filled with people who actually love me. My staff, my friends, the women we've helped. Cynthia is here, looking radiant in a blue dress, laughing with a man she met last year. A good man who treats her with respect. I'm wearing a gown. A real one. Gold and shimmering. I catch my reflection in the glass doors. I don't see the frightened girl anymore. I see a woman who walked through fire and came out carrying buckets of water for everyone else. I walk up to the stage. The same stage where I was humiliated. The same stage where they tried to call me crazy. I take the microphone. The room goes silent, but this time, it's a silence of respect, not judgment. Welcome, I say. My voice is strong. 3 years ago, I stood in this room, and was told I was worthless. I was told I was a sheep. I pause, looking out at the crowd. They were right about one thing. I was a sheep. I followed the rules. I kept my head down. I let them shear me of my confidence and my money. I see Mrs. Higgins in the front row, nodding. But here is the thing about sheep, I continue. If you back them into a corner, if you threaten their survival, they remember that they have horns. And they remember that there are more of us than there are of the wolves. Applause ripples through the room. Tonight is for the sheep, I say, raising my glass. For the quiet ones. The ones in the basements. The ones working double shifts. The ones holding the family together while everyone else takes the credit. This is your venue now. This is your house. As the applause swells into a roar, I feel a vibration in my pocket. I check it discreetly. It's a notification from my bank app. A deposit. The final restitution payment from the sale of Frank's boat. I smile. I'm going to use it to buy a new van for the center. Or maybe I'll take a vacation. A real one. Somewhere with a beach and no cell service. I've earned it. I look at the camera, at you. You know, people ask me if I regret doing it so publicly. If I regret the humiliation of that night. And I tell them, no. Because sometimes, you have to let the rot be exposed to the sunlight before you can cut it out. If you are in a situation like I was, if you are the provider, the ATM, the scapegoat, I want you to listen to me. You are not crazy. You are not selfish for wanting to keep what you earn. You are not a bad person for saying no. They will call you names. They will try to guilt you. They will tell you that family is everything. But family isn't blood. Family is respect. Family is the people who cheer for you when you win, not the ones who try to steal your trophy. Don't wait for them to change. They won't. Don't wait for an apology. It's not coming. Be your own architect. Build your own exit. Keep your receipts. And when the moment comes, don't be afraid to snap. Because on the other side of that snap isn't madness. It's freedom. Thank you for listening to my story. If you have a story about a Brenda in your life, share it in the comments. I read every single one. Don't forget to check out the other videos on the channel for more stories of justice and karma.